A few clarifications before you watch this potentially difficult video. Number one, emotional covert incest does not have to occur between opposite sex child and parent. It can occur between a mother and her daughter. It can occur between a father and his son. Although more typically and more commonly, it does occur between opposite sex members, so between a son and his mother, and a daughter and her father. Number two, when emotional covert incest happens between opposite sex participants, when the child is of one sex and the incestuous parent is of the other sex, it occurs in different stages of different phases of personal development and growth. When the incestuous relationship is between a son and his mother, it's typically before the age of 36 months, before the phase of separation individuation. When it is between a daughter and her father, it typically starts after age 36 months. And this is the reason, of course, that daughter-father emotional covert incestuous relationships often devolve into actual sexual incest. Point number three. This video that you're about to see, I made a mistake. On one occasion, I think, or maybe twice, I used the word homoerotic when I actually meant to say autoerotic. So throughout this video, when I talk about autoerotism, the adjective should be autoerotic. But there is a connection between homoerotism and autoerotism, and I'm going to discuss this connection in a future video. So there is a connection between autoerotism and homosexuality, and it's a very intricate and interesting connection. Number four, emotional covert incest is lifelong. It's lifelong because it retards, it prevents the growth and the development of the child. It hinders the separation individuation phase. It obstructs, definitely in many cases destroys, the possibility for object relationships, intimate, romantic, and relationships with other people. But an even more potent, more powerful reason is that the child rehearses relationships with other people first with his parents. So up to age 36 months, the child is enmeshed or fused with the parental figure, the mother usually, and uses her as a dress rehearsal. So he directs his sexual urges at her. He creates intimacy with her. Erotism, his erotic drives are directed at her, and so on and so forth. And he exercises, he develops a skill set of interacting with future intimate partners. But an incestuous relationship, emotional covert relationship, prevents this from happening. And so the child develops a shared fantasy with the parental figure. And I discuss in this video how this shared fantasy becomes the exclusive mode, the only way that the child continues to interact with other people in his life or her life later on. So the shared fantasy is born out of an emotional covert incestuous relationship. Number five, all children experience emotional covert incest. It's a healthy phase up to age 36 months. But if the parent reacts inappropriately to the covert, intimate, incestuous relationship, if the parent continues to perpetuate the shared fantasy with a child, one way or another, and I explained the two ways that this happens, then it's a problem for later on in life. This kind of child, when he becomes an adult, is incapable of sexual relationships, normal, healthy sexual relationships. He tends to dehumanize, objectify, and degrade, sadistically sometimes, his intimate partners, and I explain why in the video. Or he becomes totally asexual, experiences sexual dysfunctions. Similarly, this kind of child has an insecure attachment style and dreads intimacy. All this is in the video you're about to see. So, emotional covert incest, in my view, is much worse than actual sexual overt incest, because it's unspoken, it's forbidden, it's the unknown, the unthought known in bolases, the phrase used by Bolas. It's something that's in the air, it's atmospheric, it's a hidden text, it's a palimpsest, and the child is disoriented, confused, there's role confusion, and this carries on into later life. And this kind of child, when he grows up and becomes an adult, remains stuck and repeats the same kind of dysfunctional relationship with his mother, or maybe his father later on, with other partners. And this is known as repetition compulsion. Emotional covert incest. Have fun. Mama's boy, daddy's girl. There's a good chance that we are dealing with an instance of covert or emotional incest, which is the topic of today's non-sprawling video. My name is Sam Baknin, and I'm the author of Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. I'm also a former visiting professor of psychology in Southern Federal University in Russia. I am currently on the faculty of SIAPS, Commonwealth Institute for Advanced Professional Studies, which is the way I like it. Covert emotional incest. Covert emotional incest was first described by Kenneth Adams. He described the victims of covert or emotional incest as angry, guilty. They feel guilty towards their parents. They have problems with self-esteem, addiction, especially substance abuse, and problems with sexual and emotional intimacy, which is a delicate way of saying that they are incapable of sexual and emotional intimacy. Alcoholism and other substance addictions are also associated with the occurrence of covert or emotional incest. So, to summarize this segment, covert emotional incest is not a good thing. I hope you got that message. Now, covert or emotional incest is a part of a larger phenomenon known as parentifying, or the word that I coined, adultifying. It's also known as the Atlas personality. When the child is forced to behave as an adult, as a parent, when the child is denied the possibility of acting in an age-appropriate manner, when the child is penalized, whenever the child tries to express his or her needs. So this leads to a situation of parentifying or adultifying, when the child actually acts as his mother's father or his father's mother, or some combination where the child is the parent and the parents are the children. The child affords the infantilized parent, the immature parent, the Peter Pan parent. The child provides such a parent with succor, but not sex. So, emotional covert incest is a sexless intimate relationship. And it is this disjunction, this contra I would say, contradiction even between intimacy and sexlessness that has a long-term impact on the child turned adult later in life. The child learns to associate intimacy with a lack of sex. He also learns to associate intimacy with forbidden, taboo sex. So when he finds himself later in life involved in an intimate relationship, he is very conflicted about sex and about his own sexuality. Because on the one hand, he feels attracted, besotted, infatuated with an individual, the intimate partner. There is a lot of intimacy. There's a lot of vulnerability maybe. There's some attachment, secure or insecure, but still there's some attachment, there's some bonding. And yet, in this person's mind, the person who has been exposed to emotional covert incest early on in life, in this person's mind, if you're intimate with someone, you should not have sex with them. Sex is verboten, to use my favorite German word. Sex is taboo. Sex is even dirty. The target of intimacy, the target of positive emotions such as love, is also the forbidden object of sexual thoughts, drives, and urges. Now, the child who is parentified or adultified tries to please, because the child depends for its existence on the parent. The child needs the parent to provide food and shelter. But even more importantly, the child needs the parent to cater to the emotional needs of the child. The parent is the source of support and succor and holding and containing and acceptance and warmth and empathy and compassion and affection and love. These are the needs of a small child. The child is terrified to lose the parent. Children who are parentified and adultified have extreme separation insecurity, aka colloquially abandonment anxiety. And the reason is that the child is forced to become the parent. And because children are children and they don't know how to be adults and they haven't been trained in being parents, they constantly feel inadequate. They feel that they're failing. They feel that their services as a surrogate parent, their conduct as an adult is insufficient. They feel they're striving, they're trying very hard, and they never make it. The parent who parentifies her child, the parent who adultifies his child, these parents are setting the child up for failure, because children do a bad job of being adults and an even worse job of being parents, especially during the formative years, 0 to 6. But I would say even well into early adolescence, let's say 12 or 13. So there is a very complex situation here. The parents abrogate their parental duties and obligations. They simply give up on being parents. They are too self-indulgent, they're too depressed, they're too absent, they're too emotionally cold and detached, they have an insecure attachment style of their own, they may be narcissists, etc., etc. These are known collectively as dead parents, not in the physical sense, but in the emotional sense. So these kind of parents parentify the child. They act childishly. They regress to an infantile phase whenever confronted with stress or conflict or a conundrum or a dilemma, or they need to make a choice or a decision. And they leave it up to the child to function as a parent. But this way, they set up the child for failure. The child tries to please them and becomes a people pleaser. And yet, there's always this ambient sense of I am not good enough, I'm a failure, I'm inadequate. In short, the parentification and adultification of the child create a permanent bad object. Such a child is likely to develop an insecure attachment style. The enmeshment with a parent, because this is a state of enmeshment with a parent, is self-annihilating. The child annihilates itself, negates itself, minimizes itself in order to cater to the overt and implicit requirements and expectations and needs of the parent. And of course, in such a situation, the intimacy is extreme and growing all the time. There are no boundaries. We'll talk about it a bit later. There are no boundaries, so the child doesn't know what is appropriate and inappropriate, where to start and where to stop, how far to go and where to put its foot down and say no. Similarly, the parent is at a loss. This is terra incognita. This is a continent which both parent and child are exploring. And the parentifying parent, the parent who adultifies the child, is herself a child. So she's incapable of exercising adult judgment and evaluation or estimation of the situation. She's incapable of establishing and then enforcing boundaries.